Hello, this is Todd Luck, and this is another Power Rangers discussion video. With Hasbro taking over the toy license for Power Rangers in April of 2019, that leaves a lot of things up in the air, a lot of questions, a lot of possibilities and things to wonder about. And so I'm going to go down a list of my questions about this, and it's going to involve the toy line, it's going to involve the show, movies, video games. So let's get started. And so the first question is, what will the cost of the toys be? Will they be similar to the price points we're used to? And I think the answer is it's very possible that might happen. It's always possible that it could go up or it could go down with a new company. But looking at Hasbro's toys, they do put out a lot of affordable, lower price point toys, as well as the more higher scale, more expensive toys. So I think it's very possible that they're going to get pretty close to the price point that we're used to on Power Ranger toys. So the next question is, what happens with the action figures? Will they stay in the same 5-inch scale? Maybe. They could get bigger, they could get smaller. Hasbro might make them in entirely different ways. I think there's a good chance the 5-inch scale will stay because that's become so associated with the line. And I think it's very similar to how Star Wars was associated with 3 3/4 inch tall figures under Kenner. And so when Hasbro got it, they continued that legacy. So I think there's a pretty good chance they'll do the same thing with the 5-inch figures in Power Rangers. Now, are they going to still do the heroic proportions on the figures? We've had that big, bulky look on the guys since day one. And I gotta say, I got a feeling they're probably going to keep that. I got a feeling that what I want, the, slimmer, more show accurate proportions on the figures, probably isn't going to happen because that's not just something Bandai did. That is a franchise wide portrayal of those characters, whether you were looking at video games or comic books or illustrations of them done for marketing purposes. They always ended up with those big muscular proportions if they were outside of the show. So unfortunately, that looks like that's something coming from Saban instead of the toy maker, and that may stay. But with a new toy partner, Hasbro may come in with some different ideas and they may change some things. They may give us more show accurate proportions on the figures because obviously in this day and age, big, bulky, hulking guys as your characters is a little dated. That made more sense in the early 90s. Now we're, in 2018. Might be time for a change. We'll see. And another question is, will the accessories that come with the figures continue to be very basic and be really weird colors like those black swords with the Ninja Steel figures? My guess is probably not. Hasbro, if you look at their lines, they tend to do a very good job of having very appropriately colored accessories and doing paint jobs on their weapons and all this good stuff, even the lower price point stuff. So I got a feeling that's probably going to change for this line, and it's going to change for the better. So I'm looking forward to that if that happens. Another question is, what about role play items like morphers and swords and weapons for kids to run around with? There's always been complaints by adult collectors that they're not big enough or they're not show accurate, or sometimes the gimmicks or action features don't work quite right. And I think that may change. I mean, it is possible they could have the same folks putting them out in the same way, but it's also very possible and probably likely that Hasbro will try to make them the same quality that they do in their other lines because they put out some pretty darn good role-playing items in their lines. And a big question is, will the Legacy line continue? I think it's very possible to continue in some form. I think the really big question is, will it continue as the same Legacy line? Will we continue to get the role-playing items and the Zords and Megazords that they had planned? And that's a big question. I think it's entirely possible. When Super 7 bought Masters of the Universe, they got the same molds and they got the same sculptors, and they were actually able to continue the Masters of the Universe Classics line. That could happen here, or they may just start from scratch. We'll just have to see. And another question is, what will happen with the Megazords? Will they remain the same scale? I think that's entirely possible because that is size, that 10-inch size is so associated with Megazords, and it's just very standard for that size of figure. You know, it's very standard for giant robots and giant monsters and things like that. But it's also entirely possible they could change the size of it. I think what we will probably see is a change in quality. I think we'll probably see a higher quality, more show accurate Megazords, and hopefully for around the same price point. We'll see. Will they continue the Zord Builder feature for the Zords and Megazords? I kind of doubt it, and that would be a shame because there were so many possibilities of mixing and matching all the different Zords from all the different seasons. But yeah, I kind of doubt it, but it's always possible. I do, however, think if you look at Transformers or even some of the vehicles they put out for their other toy lines, that we'll definitely be seeing a quality increase in the Zords. Probably their gimmicks will work a little better, and they'll probably be a little more show accurate. Will we be getting power items for future seasons, like the Chargers, the Ranger Keys, the Ninja Stars? Will we be getting stuff like that? It's entirely possible we won't, or they might be packaged in with the figures or with the vehicles instead of in multi-packs that you buy just just the Chargers or just the Keys. Or it's entirely possible we won't have them at all. Next season is already been announced, and it's going to be based on Go Busters. And Go Busters actually didn't have anything like this in Japan, so it's entirely possible we won't have any type of gimmick or power item to collect next year. So that may be a permanent shift in the franchise, or Hasbro could always come up with something uniquely American for a gimmick or power item for that season. And what about the packaging? And this to me is a kind of a personal favorite of the line. I think Power Ranger packaging has been just sensational, some of the best out there. And I've always been really impressed by the Ranger Keys and the Ninja Steel Power Star packs that are able to replicate the morphers just using the design of the card back. And that's always been amazing to me. And I love those packages and some of the window boxes with these really great backgrounds to display the Zords in, or you can take them out and just use them as backdrops for your figures and stuff, have been really awesome. And I really, really hope Hasbro keeps that, but it's entirely possible they might not. And we saw a shift away from all that to all black packaging that, as I remarked in a previous review, looks almost exactly like Hasbro's Star Wars Black and Legends packaging. So it's very possible we could be moving to that, and that was basically just kind of helping to ease the transition. And I think we also need to start thinking about entirely new types of toys that we might be getting, or toys that we don't normally get. For instance, civilian figures, civilian heads on figures, and like 12-inch monster figures. I think all these things are incredibly possible. If you look at all the other stuff that Hasbro does, I think that's very possible. The picture you're looking at is actually from Toy Fair, and it's a Tokyo Nation picture, and it shows kind of one of Bandai's last hurrahs. They're actually putting civilian heads on a couple of Mighty Morphin Power Ranger figure arts. So they're actually going to do that. Maybe we'll be getting a lot more stuff like this at a lower price point from Hasbro. Keep your fingers crossed. And I think we've already seen Hasbro's influence on the show in its announcement for the season next year, because they picked a Sentai season to adapt that didn't have as many toys in Japan as normal. So it would be easier for them to put out on short notice. And also, Beast Morphers just reeks of Hasbro. Hasbro has put out Battle Beast, they've put out Transformers Beast Wars, they put out Transformers Beast Hunters. Beast is a word they know resonates with their audience. They've tested it, they've sold toys with it, they know it works. So that really sounds like that name came from Hasbro. And so will we still be getting cockpit modes? Are they still going to want to do that? Or maybe they're going to want something else in the show. Or maybe Hasbro will just want to stick to translating the Sentai toys. We'll see. Also, it's going to be interesting to see if there's a shift in tone in the show, because obviously Hasbro's shows that they produce are a little more complex or a little snarkier. So that may be something that they try to push for. And it's also interesting if there's any effect on the budget of the show. Now, I don't know this for certain, but most shows that are basically advertisements for a toy line, the toy manufacturer will pitch in on that show. I don't know one way or the other if Bandai did that. But regardless of what Bandai did, it's very possible Hasbro might be putting in money into the show. So who knows? We could see an increase in the budget. You never know. Another question is, will we continue to get 2-year seasons? And I think it's going to actually be a split answer on that. And let me just go with a theory right now. This is just speculation. So I have already said in my Beast Morphers video, I believe that next year is going to be a one and done season. I believe it's going to only be 20, 22 episodes, however many they get. And that's going to be it for Beast Morphers. But I believe after that, they're probably going to do a 2-year series. And I say that because, again, there's not enough toys in Go Busters to do a 2 years of toy releases. However, when we get to that space-themed Sentai that we all assumed was going to be next, there's going to be way too many toys to squeeze into one year. I mean, you're just going to be competing with your own shelf space. So I think that would be perfect for a 2-year series. And I think so that's going to happen. And again, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is going to come out that year. Star Wars is going to come out that year. I think 2020 is going to be a perfect year to do that. And if you look at how long Nickelodeon renewed the series for, they renewed it for 3 years. Not 2, not 4, 3 years. So that would be enough to do a 1-year season or 1-year series and then do another 2-year series. So that's my going theory right now, just speculation, but that's what I think is going to happen. And another question is, if we do get a 2-year series, will we still get the word super in the season title for that second season? And I think that just depends on where it comes from. Some people speculate it comes from Saban, though I've very rarely seen that done on TV. Usually changing the name of a series between seasons creates confusion. Usually they'll just do on the promotional materials, they'll just put like a subtitle or something to give you the theme of a season or part of a season. Normally where you want to say you're new every year is in toys and in merchandising. You want to convince people to put your stuff on the shelf, and you want to say, oh, well, you may had it last year, but this year it's different. And that's my going theory, is that probably it came from Bandai. So I'm wondering if Hasbro might have different ideas on that. We'll see. And another question is, will this lead to the show eventually switching networks? And I say this because Hasbro does actually have its own network. It used to be called The Hub. Now it's called, I believe, Discovery Family or something like that. It does air Hasbro shows. However, Hasbro does not insist on their shows only being on that channel. They also have Transformers on Cartoon Network. So I think Hasbro, regardless of if they're a toy partner or if they do buy it at some point, understand that they're on the line for the toys and if they bought it, the merchandising selling. And if they put it on a channel like that that has a fraction of the viewership of Nickelodeon, that might be bad for the franchise. So they definitely have some skin in the game. I don't think they're going to do anything stupid, but I think it's always a possibility they might want to put it on their own network eventually. And what about movies? Obviously, Hasbro has had a lot of success with its own properties, like Transformers on the big screen. I don't know how much push they're going to have as just a toy partner, though obviously their connections in Hollywood do help the cause for a Power Rangers sequel or another Power Ranger reboot. But I think if they end up eventually buying Power Rangers, that I think there's a very, very good possibility they're going to want a movie. And lastly, video games. Now, the transition between Bandai and Hasbro will not affect apps and mobile games. Saban uses different companies for those, but they have used Namco for console games. So we may be seeing different companies make console games of Power Rangers in the future, so that'll be interesting. And if you're interested in playing Power Rangers Mega Battle on the PlayStation or Xbox, I highly recommend doing that before April 2019. Once you download it, it's yours. But once that license runs out and they take it off the eShop or whatever they call it, it's gone for good. So if you're interested in that game, go for it now. And that's it. That's all the questions I have right now. I know that's a lot, but it's a huge, huge shift for this franchise. A lot of things are up in the air. It's honestly really exciting. It's kind of nerve-wracking in some ways, but it's really exciting in so many others. So it'll be very interesting to see how this new partnership with Hasbro works out, and just really curious for the future right now. All right, like and subscribe for more videos, and until next time, may the power protect you.